high there, okay? So then at that level, so first the exchange rate will move down to 3, okay, from 2 to 3. So when you are at 0.3, you have just established the equilibrium in the goods market, okay? So moving from 0.2 to 0.3 means, sorry, not the goods market, but the asset market, because number 3 is on the A curve. So as you move from number 2 to number 3, you just have got the exchange rate that will appreciate, so that you have got the equilibrium in the asset market, particularly in the IPC, I mean the foreign exchange market, because the exchange rate is part of the foreign exchange market, okay? So moving 2 to 3 means you have established the equilibrium in the asset market at 3, but still you do not have the equilibrium in the goods market. So then gradually these 3 will come down to 0.1, okay? So when you are at 0.1, then you are maintaining, still you are maintaining the asset market equilibrium. When you hit here, you have established both the asset market and the goods market equilibrium here, okay? So that is how the economy will adjust. Now you may ask me, why did you start with the asset market, okay? So let's say I have drawn it like this. Then I say that from here I could have gone there, okay? And then we could have come here, okay? From here, let's say this is 2, this is number 1, okay? This is number 3. So instead of number 3 to go there, then coming back to 1, we could have come back to number 1 again with the same outcome. Now, can anybody tell me why that I did not do that? Is there any reason? Why I moved down and then I moved this rather than going to the DD and then coming down? Is there any particular reason, or is it just I just wanted to draw it like that? That's not like that. It's my wish. I'm an exogenous, I'm independent. Is there any economic reason? Can you think of any economic factor or any justification to move to the A market first and then to the asset market first and then gradually moving to the goods market? Anyone, any guess? Anything about the economy or something like that you can think of? That, okay, you're talking about these two markets, this market is like that, that market is like that, so that's why you did it like that. Any explanation? Yes? Which price? I mean the P. P adjust? So, so normally about this A and DD, yes, it is a short run analysis, okay, fine. So why did I move to A first?
Which A?
Yeah, here, this is the whole A. From point 2, the point 2 I moved to the A first, but I could have moved from point 2, I could have moved to DDL as well. Because at the end of the day, that you will be at point 1. You will come down here. Whether you take this path or you go there and then take that path, the end result is the same. So my question is that why I did not take that path, but rather this one? That is my question. You could have arrived at point 1 in any way. Because the variables that represent the AA, what are those variables? Interest rate, then exchange rate, okay, here we talk the exchange rate, okay, expectation. So these variables can change within a very, very short period of time. So the asset market is always more volatile than the goods market, okay. You look at the exchange rate, okay, you look at the expectation, okay, you even to some extent you look at the interest rate, okay. So the interest rate, the asset market variables are very much volatile. Asset market adjusts pretty quickly, okay? relative to the goods market. I'm not telling that the goods market, the things do not change, they do change, okay? The output can change, your consumption can change, investment, C, I, G, export, import, yes, because DD represents all those variables, right? C, I, G, but your investment is not that volatile. Well, it is volatile, but if you look at the consumption is pretty much similar. Your consumption doesn't change, okay? Even if you get a lot of money, firstly, it takes time to change, to have the lot of money, okay? Number one. Number two, even if your money changes, you don't go for 5 meals or 10 meals a day. You don't change your consumption that much. So the consumption is quite stable. So because the consumption is stable, and given the consumption is the biggest component of the aggregate demand is relatively stable. So that's why the goods market, the DD is more stable, okay? So that's why I think that the first adjustment will take place in the A schedule, and then gradually we move to the DD. Okay? So that's why we have drawn it like that. Okay. Now, if we talk about the policy here, we say that if you change the macro policy, mainly we are talking about exchange rate policy, fiscal policy, monetary policy, right? We are talking about those policies. So how do changes in the macroeconomic policies impact the output of the exchange rate in the short run? Because we are talking about the A and DD, and in A and DD we mostly talk about the short run, okay? But if you assume that the price can change in the short run, then it will be a long run analysis as well. Okay, if we believe, or if there is a market, if there is a country where the price is pretty flexible, the wage can change very quickly, the labor market is quite flexible, the country is really developed, and so on, then you can assume that, okay, possibly in the long run as well, we can observe the similar pattern. Okay. So the important question, because the macroeconomic policy is useful in the sense that we utilize the macro policy to counteract the economic disturbance. Okay. So if you think that the macro policy can affect the exchange rate, but more importantly, if you think that the macro policy can impact the output here, so we are talking about this variable here, okay? We are more interested in this variable because this E is a nominal variable. So that's why we don't really care. Well, we care, but not that much. So E is not our main concern. Our main concern is this variable, which is Y, okay? So now, if we can analyze, if you can use the A and DD diagram here, and then we say that, well, this A and DD curves, the schedule, can be affected by macro policy. That means we say that by affecting A and DD, we can affect GDP. So, okay? So that's why we are using that in an open economy, we want to see how the macro policy affect Y. If we say that yes, we can impact, we can change Y by changing the A or DD, then we say, okay, if we have got output in mind, then we can influence this output. Okay, so the only thing is that we will have to think about if the output is low or if the output is high, we need to think what sort of shift in the A and the DD is needed so that we achieve the, your desired level of output, long run output, potential output, whatever you call it, okay, or the full employment output, okay. So we will see whether we can use the macro policy so that the A and DD curve can be affected, and so that the output also can be controlled. Okay, by controlling A and macro policy will control A and DD, and that will ultimately control or impact the output. Okay. Okay. So and also when you talk about the macro policy, there will be temporary policy and there's a permanent policy. So remember, in case of money supply, I said that if there is a change, if there is a temporary change in money supply, then it does not affect your expectation. If there is a temporary change in money supply, then it doesn't affect your expectation. But if there is a permanent change, then not only your exchange rate changes, if there is a permanent change, then it will affect the expected exchange rate as well. So the permanent change in money supply will have a bigger impact because the permanent change will affect your actual changes in E as well as changes in expectation. Okay. So we say that if let's say we are talking about the money supply. So the money supply will affect if it is temporary. Temporary means your R will be affected, right? But if the money supply change is permanent, it will affect R, it will affect E, then it will affect P as well, right? So obviously, so everything gets affected. The impact on R will be different here than the impact on R there, if it is permanent. Okay. So that is what we have seen. So the temporary and the permanent nature of the macro policy change is also very, very important. Okay. So the monetary policy is all about the central bank's action, mainly the money supply here. So the monetary policy is considered to affect the asset market first. Okay. So if there is any change in money supply, it will affect the A curve first. Okay, the asset market will be affected first, and the money supply affects the monetary the asset market, and within the asset market, so you've got money supply or the monetary policy affecting the domestic money market. Domestic money market, and then this is affecting this will affect the forex market as well. Then this will ultimately affect your the asset market here. Okay. So the money market will first affect your domestic money market, and that will affect the foreign exchange market, and ultimately it will affect the overall asset market here. Okay. So that is the setting of the money market. And for the fiscal policy, we said that the government increases the amount of government purchase. So therefore, we said the fiscal policy will affect the aggregate demand first. So the fiscal policy will affect the DD, and the monetary policy will affect the A curve. Okay. So that is our assumptions here, and I guess this is pretty much realistic as well. And lastly, if there is a temporary policy change, whether it is a temporary fiscal or temporary monetary, doesn't matter. If the changes, if the printing of the money or the increase in the government expenditure, if they are temporary in nature, okay, so the temporary changes in the government expenditure or the temporary changes in the money supply are expected to reverse in future. Because it is temporary, you know that it will come back. So today you print more money, but you know that in future that money will be taken out of circulation. So today the central bank is increasing money supply, but tomorrow they will withdraw that money supply and they will just burn it. Okay? Or today the government is spending more money, but we know that in future this government will behave properly. This government will be more prudent, because increasing government expenditure, let's say that this year the government is spending more money because the government is constructing 5 more hospitals. But that doesn't mean that the government will create 5 more hospitals every year. It is just 1 year they are putting more money to construct 5 more hospitals. Okay? Then after next year, no more expenditure on hospital or additional expenditure. So that your actual health expenditure will go back to the previous level after 1 year. Okay? So that's so these are temporary. This is an example of a temporary increase in the government expenditure or a temporary increase in the money supply, because it will go back to the previous level. Okay? So that's the idea. So it gets reversed in future. So that's why it does not affect the expectation about the exchange rate in the long run. So it does not affect. So any temporary change will not have any impact on the expectation. Okay? It will just have a temporary impact, short-run impact. And that short-run impact is, for example, if you increase money supply temporarily, then increasing money supply will reduce your interest rate, but only in the short term. For a short period of time, if a government prints more money, so in the short run, your currency will depreciate, your interest rate will go down, but in the short run. But in the long run, maybe after 1 year, after 2 years, your interest rate also will go back, and the exchange rate also. Whatever depreciation was there, that depreciation will basically will vanish. Okay, the currency will go back to the previous level. Okay, so that there might be a very short period of time there might be some depreciation if there is a temporary policy change and it doesn't affect the expectation at all. Okay. Okay. So now here we say that if there is an increase in the money supply here, as we have seen before, if there is an increase in the money supply, then the interest rate will be lower. So the interest rate will be lower in the short run. So that means the domestic currency will depreciate. So E will go up and the aggregate demand goes up here as well. So firstly, we say that if there is an increase in money supply, okay, so we start from point 1 here. So if there is an increase in money supply here, so that is your A curve here. And that is your DD curve here, okay? So the A curve, if there is an increase in money supply, so your exchange rate move from here to here, okay? So this is basically because of the increase in money supply here. Okay, so we know that because of the increase in money supply here, because your exchange rate depreciates here, okay? So we say the exchange rate depreciates and the output goes up. So immediately what happens here? So as soon as from here, if you increase the money supply means for the same output, the exchange rate will be higher. Okay. So for a given y, the output will be here. Okay. So it will jump due to increase in money supply, it will jump. Okay. Then it will come up to here. Okay. So then you have got higher output here with E2 here. Okay, that's E2, and you have got E1 here. Okay. So you have E1 here, E2 there. Okay. So for the same output, the exchange rate will depreciate, but then gradually it will come here. So basically, you see the economy will move from point 1 to point 2 here. And so also this is very clear that because here you have got the depreciation, when there is a depreciation, you expect the output to be higher. Okay? Because if there is a depreciation, your current account goes up. Okay? When you have got the depreciation, then first it will affect the asset market here, the A curve. Okay? So the first your A is going up here. Okay? So first it will affect the A curve because your E has depreciated here. Okay? Because your E has depreciated here. Okay? So then your current account improves here. Okay? And if the current account, because current account is export minus import, and because the current account improves, your Y goes up. Okay? So then you move this way. Your output is higher. Okay? So between 1 and 0.2, because your exchange rate is high, the current account improves, so your output also goes up. But this happens later because this is a goods market, remember. The first is the asset market here. So you jump first for the same output. First output doesn't change. Output doesn't change immediately. So first the output, and for the same output, the exchange rate is very high first. Okay? So then gradually, with the depreciated currency, then your export sector, your export and import responds. I mean the goods market will respond slowly. Okay? So first for the same output here, okay? For the same output here, as you increase money supply, your currency will depreciate. Okay? And that depreciation can encourage your export. So as soon as your export picks up at a later stage, so gradually your output will go up. Output will increase. Yeah. So then you end up with the new Y2. Okay? So that's how in the short run the economy adjusts. Okay? And you essentially shift the A curve outward. Okay? But obviously, when I say explain or analyze, you have to bring in this, okay? Because if you just say that, well, if you Don't say, if you say that if the money supply, if you write in the exam, if you say if the money supply goes up, then exchange rate going up, output going up, okay? If you say this, okay? So this is going up, this is going up, right? And you just say that, let's say your answer is, so here, so you say money supply going up. So let's say you say that AA shifts up, then you say E going up, Y going up, okay? So A is going that way, okay? So if you write this only, then also this is not a good answer, okay? If I say that explain the impact of increasing money supply, if you say that using the diagram, then you say that if there is an increasing money supply, then the A curve will shift upward, so and the exchange rate will depreciate and the output will increase. Then if that is your answer, then it is the maximum you can get 60%, sort of, okay? Because the reason is that you did not explain, because what you have written here and what you have shown here, they're exactly same. There is no additional information here, then I can see it here. Because I'm emphasizing it again and again, that you need to develop the skill of explanation, interpretation, intuitive understanding, okay? If your intuitive understanding is correct, that means you are a good student, okay? And it will be useful for you. Because just whatever is there, MS is going up. I have given it in the exam, as in the question, that what happens if the money, using the A and DD schedule, explain the impact on the economy. Then you say that if the money supply goes up, A curve will shift outward. I can see that in your diagram, number one. Then number two, you say that the exchange rate is going up. I can see that here. Then you said that the output is going up. I can see it there. So you did not give me any additional information besides the diagram. That means you did not explain the diagram. Explanation of the diagram is that there must be something else going on here. What are those something else? You should have said that here you did not talk about interest rate here. Okay, because that interest rate is related to the exchange rate. Because here you say the money supply is going up, but where is your interest rate? You did not mention it here. And then when you say the exchange rate here, you did not talk about current account here. Okay, what is the current account there? Because what is the relationship between E and Y? It is a current account. What is the relationship between money supply and E? It is the interest rate. So your interest rate is missing, current account is missing. So that's why your explanation is incomplete. Okay? So that's how you improve your writing. Okay? So not this year. If you do, do you do any dissertation in your final year here, like a long essay, big essay in your final year? Is it mandatory as part of the year, as part of your BSc program, this program, right? Yes. When you write a dissertation, this is the skill that you develop. You produce a table. You download the number from various sources. Okay. So you produce a table. So when you produce a table like numbers with 5-6 variables, then you need to be able to describe the table. Don't say that okay, between 1985 and 1990, as seen in table 1, between 1985 and 1990, the inflation has gone up, I don't know, from this percent to that percentage. But I can see that in the table, because in the table, you put the inflation data, you put the years. So every 5 years, and then inflation data. I can see that, you don't have to tell me. But when you produce those numbers, behind those numbers there are stories, okay? You have to tell why that between 1985 and 1990, those 5 years, the inflation has gone up, but then next 10 years, the inflation went down. So what are the reasons? Did you explore those reasons, okay? So you have to say that, so whether it is a graph or whether it is a numbers, like a table with numbers, you need to say something that we cannot see in the table or in the graph, okay? But they are ultimately that is affecting Y. Ultimately that is affecting, let's say, your inflation or something like that. So whatever research you do or dissertation or you do, you have to be able to provide the intuitive explanation that we cannot see in the table or in the number or in the graph. Okay, so that is a good. Then only then you get a good mark in your essay. Okay. Okay. So that's the answer here. Okay. So I have written here. So I have drawn it there as well. Okay. So you can see it. Okay. Now, then we said that the moving from point 1 to point 2 along the DD curve here. So you're moving this way here. So from point 1 to point 2 you're moving this way. So your exchange rate is depreciating and your output is also going up. So you said that the domestic products related to the foreign products becoming cheaper, which is your current account here. Okay, I said the domestic products related to the foreign products are becoming cheaper. So the aggregate demand goes up, meaning that the current account is going up. So current account is going up means aggregate demand going up, aggregate demand is going up means your GDP goes up here. So the output goes up. Okay? So that is when you move from here to there. Okay? This movement here. Okay? So this movement, because here you're moving along the DD curve here, okay? So here you talk about that along the DD curve. As you move here, you are moving along the DD curve. So it has to be something to do C plus I plus G plus current account. It has to be something to do with this, okay? This part here. But here our main variable is current account here. Not C, not I, not G. Okay? So whenever you have got AA and DD, the first thing you have to figure out, should I focus on the AA side or the DD side? That should be in your mind first. So any question related to the AA and DD, the first thing you have to think, okay, given the question, which side will it affect the AA and DD? That's number one. Let's say it affects the AA. Then the second question should be, within the AA, will it affect the money market or will it affect the foreign exchange market? That should be the second question. Okay? Because the AA curve has got two markets together. Okay? So you have got two markets here. Okay? So the first thing to figure out that if, so for example, this question was here. The question was increase in money supply. That was the question here. Analyze that, using the A and DD diagram, analyze the effect of increase in money supply. So the first thing you need to understand that because I'm talking about the money supply, it should affect the AA curve, number one. Number two, within the AA curve, it will affect the domestic money market first. Okay? So that means your AA curve will shift first. And there is no change in DD here. Okay? So that's how you need to address all the points, or you need to explain any intervention. Okay? Okay. So then what about the increase in government expenditure? Obviously the increase in government expenditure, or if there's a decline, if there's a decrease in the tax, then obviously it will affect the DD curve. So the DD curve will shift to the right, and if the DD shifts to the right, because there is a higher government expenditure, we are talking about here, G, higher government expenditure will mean that higher aggregate demand. Higher aggregate demand means higher output. Okay, so your output also will be higher. Okay, so which you see here as well. Okay, so the higher government expenditure affects the DD, and the DD will shift to the left. So you have got higher output, but higher output means you have got with this higher output, you have got the appreciation of the currency as well. Now, can anybody tell me why you have got appreciation of the currency? When there is an increase in the government expenditure, your currency, your currency appreciates. If there is an increase in the government, if there is an increase in the government expenditure, DD will shift. So you have increase in GDP because it is C plus I plus G. So G is going up, aggregate demand going up. Aggregate demand going up, Y going up, because AD is equal to Y, always. Okay? So I understand that when G goes up, your Y goes up. I understand that part. Can you tell me why do you think that there is an increase in output, there is an appreciation of the currency as well? Anyone? Why there is an appreciation of the exchange rate as well? Anyone? Yes, anyone? There is an increase in government expenditure, aggregate demand going up, GDP is going up. So that's, as I said, quite straightforward. My question is that there is an appreciation of the currency as well. Why is that? Yeah. Because R goes up. So why does R go up? So you're telling when the government is spending more money, government is borrowing money, right? So if the government borrows money, the R goes up. So that's why, okay. So one explanation is that when the government is spending more money, okay, when you're moving from D1 to DD1 to DD2, the government is spending more money. So to spend that money, the government is borrowing from the system, and because the government is borrowing, interest rate is going up, and that's why if the interest rate goes up, the currency appreciates. So that is one explanation. Okay. Any other explanation? There is more liquidity? Right. There will be more liquidity preference because as soon as your output goes up, what happens to L? L goes up, right? And when L goes up, so you have got the G going up. G going up means Y goes up, right? Then you say that L is a function of Y and R, right? So this goes up, right? And if this goes up, then what happens? Your L is greater than L is greater than MS over P, right? Because L is higher now. So there's a disequilibrium in the money market. When the government expenditure goes up, that creates a disequilibrium in the money market. Okay? Through L. G will affect Y, and that Y will come here. Okay? This Y will affect this. Okay? So your L goes up. If L goes up, there's a disequilibrium here. Okay? Then if you have got high demand, then the price goes up. Okay? But the price, instead of price, we call it interest rate, right? If the money demand is higher, so the price of money will go up. So your interest rate will go up. Okay? Because the demand is higher. If the demand is higher than supply, the price goes up. If the price goes up, then exchange rate will appreciate. Okay? And also it can happen with the borrowing as well, as you said, yes. Because ultimately it is the interest rate. Because for the exchange rate to appreciate, you need the interest rate to go up. So because the money market is very quick here, okay, so normally it is due to increase in Y as well as due to the government borrowing. So together causes the interest rate to go up. Okay, but sometimes the government may not need to borrow money to finance. It depends on the government budget situation. Okay, sometimes the government can finance it through its savings and so on. Okay, but if the government expenditure is financed by the borrowing, and if that borrowing increases interest rate, then your currency will appreciate as well. Okay, right? Okay. So that's what we have summarized here. That if you're at point 2, if the higher output, if the output is high, then your demand for money is high here. Okay, your demand for money is high, so that's why the interest rate will be higher. So their exchange rate will appreciate here. Okay, so I just whatever I wrote here, I just summarized it there as well. Okay. Yes. Yes, ideally, well, but don't use the bullet points. Okay, that's another thing. Some of you have used it, yes. Not some, I think quite a good number, because it is not a professional way of writing. Okay, in an exam, you should not use the bullet points. You should write a full sentence. Even if you think that my English is poor, still you have to try. The reason that if you don't try now, when will you try? Because when you go for a job, you will not have the opportunity to, because you cannot write a piece for your manager with bullet points, then you may lose your job even, right? They will sack you. Okay, so that's why it's a good practice that you write the full sentence in the exam, okay? Even if it is not grammatically correct, even if you know that some spelling is not correct, but still you should always should write the full sentence, okay? No bullet points, okay? That's number one. And number two is that ideally you should not write like this as well. No. As much as possible, use word. Don't use this type of thing, okay? Because it is not expected. Well, you use the up and down arrow. That's just okay. Up arrow, down arrow, just okay. Okay? But if you write it like that, and if there's no words, if you just write it like that, and if you expect me to figure it out, I think that is too much ask. I think, right? So don't write it like that. Okay? Write proper professional way. Okay? That if that happens, then that happens, then because of that, then that happens, something like that, okay? Okay, but if you are running out of time, then obviously, okay, I understand that you think that, okay, I've got only 2 minutes, I think best in 1 minute I can write it, okay, fine. At least you get some mark rather than just writing the whole sentence, okay? Okay. Okay. Now, so because we have seen that by increasing G, we can ultimately affect Y, although at the cost of some appreciation. Yes, there is some appreciation, but still we can affect the Y by increasing G. So, so the resources used in the production process can either be overemployed or underemployed. So if we have got the overemployment, then we need to cool it down, because if the GDP is too high, then we need to bring it down. So that is called the stabilization, right? So when the resources are used effectively and sustainably, the economists say that the production is at its potential or long-run level here. So that's the level we ought to achieve. Okay? When the resources are used effectively and sustainably, that means we are producing at the long-run level of output here. Okay? So otherwise there could be either underemployment, or underemployment means if there is an underemployment of resources, that will lead to unemployment in the economy, and the GDP will be lower, and so that is if there is an inefficient or ineffective utilization of the resources, which means that there is a idle capacity. Okay, there is a capacity that you're not utilizing, whether it is land, whether it is labor, whether it is capital. So the economy has got resources, okay, but it is not utilizing it properly, okay, or effectively or efficiently. So that is one. Or if you are, maybe we are using it efficiently, we are using all the labor, we are using all the capital or the land, but we are not using it sustainably. Okay, so these are two things. You can use all the land available in an economy. Okay, that means effectively there is no shortage, there is no excess capacity, there is no under capacity. The capacity utilization is complete because you are using all the land available in a country. But so that is that effectively we are using them, but we are not using them sustainably. So using the land is one thing, and using them sustainably is a different thing, right? You are using all land to grow, I don't know, fruits and vegetables, but you're using all the land here, but using the chemical fertilizer. Okay? So if you're growing the fruits and vegetables with the chemical fertilizer, yes, you are using all the land, but you're not using them sustainably because of the chemical fertilizer. Means that after 20, 30, 40 years, this land will be useless. Okay? Because of the use of chemical fertilizer. Okay? So that means either they're overemployed, meaning that you're over exploiting the soil. Okay? Yes, you are using all the land, but you're over-exploiting them. Because of the fertilizer, the soil, the land has got the capacity to produce 500 mangoes, but you are producing 50,000 mangoes because you're putting so much of fertilizer there, so you're producing more. Okay, so yes, it is effective, but it is not sustainable because then the resources are overemployed. Okay, so that's not sustainable here. Okay, okay, so then that will lead to the higher than the normal production of the goods and services. Okay, so the main objective of the monetary and the fiscal policy is to maintain the full employment, meaning that there should not be overcapacity, undercapacity, and also it should address the sustainability as well. Okay. Now suppose there is a temporary shift in the consumer taste away from the domestic product. Okay? So what will happen? All of a sudden, the consumers, they start preferring foreign goods. Then what will happen? Which card will be affected first? Which one? Which one will be affected? If that happens, if there is a temporary shift in the consumer taste away from the domestic product, it will affect which curve first? A or DD? DD, of course, it is DD, right? It's the consumption, right? Okay. So in that case, it will affect the DD. Obviously, the DD curve will shift inward. Okay. Not because DD is an upward sloping curve here. Okay. So in that case, if that happens, then if you talk about the DD here, so if you have DD here, so if that happens, then the DD curve will shift this way. Okay. DD1 to DD2. Okay. So that will happen if there is a temporary shift in the consumer taste away from the domestic product here. So you can have the A curve here. Okay. A curve here, so it will be from here. So you move from here to here. Okay. So that is your output here. And so that means that temporarily the economy can encounter some recession, okay? Meaning that the lower output, so that the GDP, the domestic GDP can fall there, okay? Because of the recession, so you can clearly see here, okay? This is recession. The GDP is falling there, right? So falling GDP is negative GDP growth, which is recession, okay? So if you've got the recession there, then the government can think about the monetary or fiscal policy. So to prevent the recession, the government can use either monetary policy, fiscal policy. The government can use either fiscal policy, then fiscal policy will, so if the government uses fiscal policy here, so what will happen? If a government uses fiscal policy, what will happen to this diagram? Anyone? If the government uses fiscal policy, what will happen to this diagram? Yes? Anyone? Can anyone want to volunteer from this side? If the government uses fiscal policy, what will happen to this diagram? Anyone? How does fiscal policy affect this diagram? Which one? A or DD? Yes, DD will shift back, right? Very good, thank you. Yes. So if you use the fiscal policy, then the DD will shift back. If any fiscal policy. So using fiscal policy means that when the consumers are doing that, the government will just counteract. Okay? So the DD will shift back, so you're there. You go back to the higher, so your output will go back here. Okay. So that is one way of doing it. Or you can use the monetary policy, right? So if you don't want to use the fiscal policy, if you want to use the monetary policy here, okay? So the monetary policy means that your A will be affected. Monetary policy affects the A, right? So if you want to use the monetary policy, so that means you are on this line. So on this line, you will have to shift it here up to here. Up to AA2, okay? Then the economy will move this way, okay? So you've got E1, then you have got E2, then you have got E3. Okay. So that is the monetary policy here. Okay. So you move from E1 to E2 just because of the temporary shift in the consumer taste. Okay. So the first one is the consumer taste here. Okay. So you have got consumer taste. Okay, consumer taste going to the foreign goods. So then your consumption is going down. So the DD will shift DD1 to DD2, so now you move from E1 to E2. Okay, so you move from here to here, and output, let's say, from Y1 to Y2 here. Okay, so that is up to here. So let's say point 1 to point 2 here. So point 1 to point 2 here. Okay, and then you have got the monetary policy here. So the monetary policy means then your AA 1 to AA2. So then your have got exchange rate. Your exchange E moves from E2 to E3. Okay, E3 means that your current account goes up. That means your equity demand goes up. So that's why your Y goes up from Y2 to Y1. This is monetary. Okay. Which is essentially you're moving from, let's say this is 0.3 here. Okay. So this is moving from 2 to 0.3 here. So that's the summary. This is the summary of the fiscal policy, but this is the summary of the using the These are using the monetary policy. Okay, because of this intervention, this shock. Okay, what you call the consumption shock. The consumption shock is not in your control. The consumer's taste, because for some reason the consumers are buying the foreign goods. It says that suppose there is a temporary shift in the consumer taste away from the domestic product. So they like the foreign products for some reason. They don't like the domestic products anymore. Okay? So that is not in your control. The thing that is in your control is the monetary policy, the fiscal policy as the government. Okay? You cannot control the consumer's preference like directly, but you can use the fiscal policy or monetary policy. If you use the fiscal policy, then you basically counteract this consumption with government expenditure. So the consumption is going up, government expenditure is going, here the consumption is going, the consumption of the domestic goods going down, but you just increase government expenditure. So if you are using the fiscal policy here, okay, so the fiscal policy means that here, so this is the monetary, so but if you want to use fiscal means, if you're talking about the fiscal means that the G is going up, okay? So here, the G is going up, consumption is going down. So they just cancel each other. Okay? So that's why the DD curve will go back to DD1. Okay? That's called fiscal. Okay? So you are at 2, then you go back to 0.1 here because of increase in G. But if it is a monetary, then that's a different picture here, because then this thing will happen here. Okay? Now, anybody any question? Anyone? 18. So we stop here. Okay. So I think since we have analyzed that the monetary policy and the fiscal policy in one shock, because the economy have different types of shock. I just use this one example. The consumers are buying more foreign goods, but there can be monetary shock. There could be consumption shock. There could be investment shock. There could be what you call the current account shock, balance of payment shock. So the economy can have various types of shock, or even money demand shock. Money demand can change. Export can change, import can change, consumption, investment, so many things can happen in the economy. So this is an example of the import. So people are importing more. That is the example, which is a current account shock. Okay. But if you analyze that, if there is a shock, well, and here this is a negative shock. So remember, there could be positive shock as well. So we have used here negative shock in the sense that your output fell. It led to a recession. So recession is a negative shock. But in the economy, you can have a positive shock as well. Okay? The foreigners are buying more of Thai goods. Okay? So instead of the Thai people buying more foreign goods, there could be positive shock. That all of a sudden, the foreigners are buying more, more Thai goods. Then your output will be much higher. It will be higher than Y1. That is also bad. When the foreigners are buying your goods, okay, if there's a positive shock, then there will be a boom. Instead of recession, there will be economic boom there. And that economic boom can be bad. Bad in the sense that when there's economic boom, normally that may lead to inflation. So the foreigners are happy, they are buying more of your goods, but you're also facing competition with the foreigners. You cannot buy an apartment in Bangkok because the foreigners are buying these apartments. So you're competing with them. Okay? So that's why both the boom and the recession both could be bad. Okay? So when the foreigners are buying more goods, that you may think that is a good thing about the economy, but if it is overcapacity, then that's bad as well. Because if you're moving too much up, if the things are going up, there will be a point it will come down. So it's better not to go too much high. Okay, going too much high means there will be some point it will collapse. Okay, so that's why we need to avoid these boom and bust basically, right? Okay, so I think I will stop here. Okay, so if you've got any question, I will be here for next 10 minutes, and then yeah, we'll go for lunch break.